Donald Trump made a jaw-dropping offer to Africa, billions in aid, military backing, and trade deals that were supposed to be irresistible. But instead of lining up to shake his hand, 10 African nations threw the offer right back in his face. This isn't just a political shockwave. It's a full-blown earthquake that could change global power forever. Why did they say no? Was it about pride, principle, hidden agendas, or something even darker brewing beneath the surface? We're about to break it all down, country by country, and trust me, number 7 will leave you absolutely speechless. Some of these nations just made the riskiest moves in their modern history. Turning down the U.S. isn't just bold, it's dangerous. It could mean sanctions, economic blackmail, or even military threats. And yet, they stood firm. Why? What's really behind this unprecedented act of defiance? And what does it mean for the future of U.S.-Africa relations? Buckle up, because by the end of this countdown, you'll understand why this moment might just be the start of a brand new Cold War. Let's get started. Number 10. Ghana. In recent years, Ghana has risen as a symbol of African pride and independence, refusing to bow to foreign pressure, no matter how tempting the offer. When the Trump administration offered Ghana a staggering $500 million in military aid, it wasn't just about generosity. Hidden beneath the surface were heavy demands. Ghana would have to cut ties with China and hand over control of its most strategic ports to U.S. forces. Ghana's response was clear: absolutely not. United in their stance, Ghana's leaders made it known that their sovereignty was not for sale. The breaking point came when the deal also demanded the establishment of U.S. military bases on Ghanaian soil, a move that would have effectively turned Ghana into a strategic outpost in America's global rivalry with China. Ghana's leadership didn't mince words, calling the proposal a form of modern-day colonialism, a blatant attempt to undermine their independence and betray their partnership with Beijing. They refused to be bullied or bought. The U.S. didn't take the rejection lightly. In retaliation, it canceled visa-free travel for Ghanaian officials, a move widely seen as a diplomatic slap in the face and a warning to other African nations contemplating similar defiance. Why does this matter? Ghana now stands at a crossroads, caught between the heavy pressure from the U.S. and the promises of investment from China. The stakes are enormous, not just for Ghana, but for the future of the entire continent. Ghana's bold rejection sends a powerful message. Africa is done begging for scraps. Countries like Ghana are demanding respect, equal partnerships, and a seat at the table, on their own terms. A new era of African agency has begun, and Ghana is leading the way. Number 9. Nigeria. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and its largest oil producer, has found itself squarely in the crosshairs of U.S. interests. The Trump administration dangled a lucrative energy deal, promising billions in investments and cutting-edge technology. But as always, there was a catch. U.S. corporations wanted control of 51% of Nigeria's oil reserves, a shocking bid to seize majority ownership of the country's most valuable resource. Nigeria's answer? Over our dead bodies. The proposal triggered national outrage. Leaders and citizens alike saw it for what it was: an attempt at economic domination. The U.S. wasn't offering true partnership, just vague promises of infrastructure projects, a few roads, bridges, maybe some schools, but without real profit sharing or long-term benefits for Nigerians. The deal was structured to serve U.S. interests far more than Nigeria's future. Nigeria's president didn't mince words, condemning the offer as economic slavery. Instead of surrendering, Nigeria turned eastward, seeking partnerships with Russia that promised fairer terms and respected their sovereignty. The U.S. response was swift and aggressive, threatening sanctions to pressure Nigeria back into negotiations. But Nigeria refused to budge. Their defiance sent a powerful message not just to Washington, but to the entire world. Africa's biggest nations are no longer playing by the old rules. This standoff could reshape global oil markets. More importantly, it's proof that the era of easy exploitation is over. Nigeria is charting its own course, refusing to be intimidated and demanding respect on the global stage. The days when African resources could be claimed with a signature and a smile are ending. Nations like Nigeria are standing tall, protecting their wealth, and leading the way toward a new era of true African independence. Number 8. South Africa. South Africa, a nation with a legacy of resistance against injustice, once again faced down a global power. This time, it wasn't colonial rule or apartheid. It was high-stakes diplomacy with the United States. The offer was tempting, billions in trade incentives, but there was a catch. The U.S. demanded South Africa abandon BRICS, the powerful alliance with Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Washington's aim was clear: isolate South Africa from emerging global partners and pull it back into America's orbit. South Africa's response was swift and defiant. "We're not your puppets." Leaders, backed by a surge of public support, rejected the pressure outright. Citizens flooded the streets chanting for sovereignty and independence. Trump's administration made the threat plain: leave BRICS or lose U.S. investment. Behind the scenes, American diplomats warned that the stakes were higher than ever, but South Africa's leaders stood their ground. They mocked the ultimatum, calling it a pathetic attempt to bully a sovereign nation. To them, it was a slap in the face to the very dignity and freedom they had fought for over generations. The U.S. retaliated by slapping tariffs on South African goods, aiming to punish and intimidate. Instead, it backfired. Businesses suffered, yes, but so did America's image. Nationwide protests erupted. South Africa didn't fold. It doubled down, tightening its commitment to BRICS and reinforcing its global alliances. This moment is historic. South Africa's defiance sends a clear message to the world: African nations will not be bullied, bribed, or bought. A dangerous precedent for U.S. influence has been set, and the balance of global power is shifting. South Africa stood tall, and in doing so, inspired a continent. Number 7. Ethiopia. Ethiopia, a nation with a proud legacy of independence, faced intense pressure from the United States, but chose sovereignty over submission. The Trump administration proposed a major deal. Ethiopia would host a sprawling U.S. drone base, positioned as a joint effort to combat terrorism. In return, Washington promised security guarantees, cooperation, and substantial financial aid. But hidden beneath the promises was a heavy price: Ethiopia's autonomy. Ethiopia's response was unflinching: "We'll handle our own security." The Ethiopian government made it crystal clear that no foreign military bases would be allowed on their soil. They rejected the idea of becoming a pawn in global power games. The U.S. demand wasn't just about partnership. It involved gaining unrestricted access to Ethiopian airspace and turning the nation into a launchpad for U.S. military operations across Africa and the Middle East. Ethiopia recognized the danger. Accepting the deal would have made them a prime target for retaliation from America's enemies. The government understood that sacrificing sovereignty for short-term financial aid was a dangerous bargain, one they refused to make. Angered by Ethiopia's defiance, the United States retaliated by cutting military assistance. But Ethiopia didn't flinch. They stood firm, reaffirming their right to self-determination and national security without foreign interference. The broader significance is clear. Ethiopia's bold rejection is part of a rising tide across Africa. Nations are no longer willing to be staging grounds for foreign wars or to trade away their independence for promises that rarely benefit their people. Ethiopia's decision sends a powerful message. Africa is asserting itself, choosing dignity, sovereignty, and true partnership over dependency and exploitation. Number 6. Kenya. Kenya found itself at a critical crossroads when the Trump administration offered $3 billion in loans, but with brutal strings attached. In exchange, Kenya would have to privatize all of its highways, ports, and railways, effectively handing over its national infrastructure to American corporations. Worse still, the deal demanded that American courts have the power to override Kenyan laws in any business disputes. Kenya's response was swift and furious. "This is worse than colonialism." Rather than submit to economic domination disguised as aid, Kenya walked away from the deal entirely. Instead, they turned to Chinese lenders, securing loans with terms they deemed fairer and more respectful of their sovereignty. Why does this matter? Kenya's rejection is a game changer. It sends a powerful signal that African nations are no longer trapped between dependency and desperation. They have options, and they're willing to walk away from bad deals no matter who offers them. In a world where power dynamics are shifting fast, Kenya's defiance proves that America is no longer the only player in Africa. The era of one-sided arrangements is ending. Africa is choosing dignity, sovereignty, and strategic partnerships on its own terms. Number 5. Tanzania. Tanzania stood firm in the face of a controversial proposal during the Trump administration. The U.S. had offered Tanzania a lucrative vaccine deal, including millions of doses and access to advanced medical technology. However, the fine print revealed a startling condition. The East African nation would have to permit experimental drug trials on its population, with minimal oversight or ethical safeguards. This clause sparked immediate concern over sovereignty, ethics, and the safety of Tanzanian citizens. President Samia Suluhu Hassan made her position clear. "We are not guinea pigs." Her administration rejected the deal, defending the dignity and autonomy of her people. While some criticized the decision, others applauded Tanzania's stand against what was perceived as medical exploitation. The refusal symbolized a broader resistance to neo-colonial practices in global health, where developing countries are sometimes seen as testing grounds for powerful nations. Tanzania's choice underscored the importance of ethical integrity, national pride, and the right to self-determination in public health policy. Rather than being swayed by promises of quick access to vaccines, the government prioritized transparency, consent, and respect for its citizens. A bold move that echoed across the continent. Number 4. Algeria. Algeria made its stance crystal clear. "We won't spy on our neighbors for you." When the United States extended an offer packed with incentives, cutting-edge surveillance technology, and robust counterterrorism support, it seemed like a strategic opportunity. But hidden behind the generous package was a troubling demand. Algeria was expected to use that technology to monitor and report on neighboring countries, Libya, Mali, and Niger. For Algeria, a nation that prides itself on regional neutrality and a doctrine of non-interference, the proposal crossed a red line. The government's response was swift and firm. "We are not your informants." Algeria has long positioned itself as a stabilizing force in North Africa and the Sahel, maintaining diplomatic relationships built on mutual respect, not manipulation. Accepting such a deal would have meant sacrificing trust with its neighbors in exchange for foreign favors. Instead, Algeria chose principle over pressure, sovereignty over surveillance. The rejection wasn't just a diplomatic decision, it was a message to the world. Algeria will not be used as a geopolitical tool. In a region plagued by foreign intervention and shifting alliances, Algeria's defiance stood out as a powerful affirmation of independence, dignity, and regional solidarity. Number 3. Senegal. Senegal didn't mince words. Keep your fake democracy promises. When the Trump administration offered aid for elections, civil society programs, and so-called democracy-building initiatives, Senegalese leaders and citizens quickly saw through the facade. What was pitched as support for democratic growth was, in reality, a veiled attempt at political control. Suspicion turned into outrage when leaked documents exposed the truth. The U.S. aimed to install a pro-Western leader in Senegal's next election. The documents outlined covert funding to opposition groups and detailed a strategy to tilt the political scales, undermining the current government under the guise of assistance. Senegal's response was swift and unflinching. The government made the documents public, exposing the regime change plot and shaming the United States on the global stage. Civil society groups, students, and everyday citizens took to the streets, rejecting foreign meddling and demanding that Senegal's future be decided only by its people. While U.S. officials tried to brush off the revelations as standard democracy promotion, their words carried little weight. The damage was done, and trust was broken. In a bold act of defiance, Senegal expelled 2 U.S. diplomats and suspended U.S. aid programs linked to the interference. The message was clear: Senegal's sovereignty is not for sale. Number 2. Angola. Angola stood firm, declaring, "We're done with your empty promises." When the United States came forward with flashy promises of billions in infrastructure investments, it sounded like a game-changing deal. But there was a catch. Angola would have to sever all trade ties with China, its largest economic partner. President João Lourenço didn't flinch. He laughed and replied, "Show us the money first." But the U.S. couldn't deliver. The promised funds were nothing more than high-interest loans wrapped in vague commitments, not the direct investment Angola needed. Worse still, the deal demanded that Angola exclude China from its lucrative mining and oil sectors, a move that would have deeply harmed its economy. Recognizing the strings and the risks, Angola called Washington's bluff. Instead of folding under pressure, the country pivoted confidently toward Beijing, signing new, more favorable agreements that prioritized mutual respect and long-term cooperation. Angola's message was clear. It would not sacrifice its national interests for hollow rhetoric or geopolitical games. It rejected coercion and chose partners who offered real value without hidden agendas. In walking away from the U.S. deal, Angola reaffirmed its independence and economic sovereignty, standing tall in an increasingly multipolar world. Number 1. Egypt. Egypt sent a shockwave through global politics with just 5 words. We don't answer to you. In what became Trump's biggest diplomatic slap in Africa, Egypt, America's most heavily funded military ally on the continent, flatly rejected a controversial pact. The deal? Support Israel's annexation of the West Bank in exchange for continued military aid. But Egypt wasn't buying it. Even Trump's own advisors warned the demand was political suicide. When Washington threatened to cut $1.3 billion in aid, President el-Sisi didn't blink. His message to Trump was bold and clear. We are not for sale. The U.S. backed down, proving that even its most loyal allies have red lines. And that changes everything. If Egypt can defy Washington, any nation can. This moment marks a historic shift, a powerful signal that Africa is no longer the playground of foreign powers. The continent is waking up, rising up, and declaring its independence on the world stage. This is just the beginning. The West can no longer dictate terms. Africa is rewriting the rules. So what side are you on? Like, share, and subscribe. Because this revolution isn't slowing down. It's only getting louder.